Thanks for joining me again. This next story is just a little background story about my grandfather, Charlie, and about some of the seeds he planted in me when I was quite young. You know, I talked to you before about moving out of our big two-story house that Charlie had built. It was our house on Ray Avenue, and moving to a little bitty house on Sherman Avenue. And it was during this time that I was in kindergarten, and I spent a lot of time at Charlie and my Nana's house because we lived so close now. One day, I was over at my grandmother and grandfather's house, and my grandmother gave me a blank sheet of paper and a pen. And I put it down on the table, and I wanted to write just like Charlie wrote. Charlie was a writer, a poet, and an attorney. Kind of a neat combination. And he would do a lot of writing. So I would see him writing, and I wanted to write like Charlie. And I was in kindergarten, and we were already learning to make some of the letters on those sheets of paper with the lines, the thick lines on them. Anyway, I took my little pen, and I just started writing, and it was just effortless. And it was just a bunch of scribble, is what it really was. But I heard the back door open, and I knew it was Charlie. And you know, my heart used to just burst to be around him. He was a lot like my three little friends. He was a lot like Gopa Gop and Masha and Love and Marriage. He always said the kindest things and the most loving things. And Charlie really knew about the things of the heart. Anyway, Charlie comes in, and he sees me there at this little end table with my writing. And he came over and he picked up this paper and he said, "Oh my heavens! What a beautiful story, Kimmy. Oh, I think this is the most beautiful story I've ever read. Irma, come over here," calling my grandmother. And Charlie proceeded to read back my story to me. And it was a beautiful story. Of course, it was about a little girl and how wonderful she was and smart she was and how pretty she was and all that kind of stuff. And I wish I could remember what the story was. I can't. But he made me feel so very special. And I felt like I could just lift up off the floor. I felt so light and so happy and so joyful to be around him. Another time, in many instances, we would sit out on their big front porch. And we would just sit out there after dinner usually and watch the people go by and watch the cars go by. There was quite a bit of foot traffic back in those days. And we were sitting out on the front porch one beautiful warm summer night, and Charlie was enjoying one of his cigars after dinner, and I was sitting over by my Nana, and Charlie was sitting over by himself. And I glanced over, and I could see that his hands were bothering him. He had terrible arthritic joints in one of his hands, and he started rubbing them, and he was wincing a little bit. So I just got up, and I went over to him, and I put my little hands on his paw and just started rubbing just very softly on his hand. And he said, "Oh, Kimmy. You know," he said, "you heal people, Kimmy. You're the only one that can make Grandpa's hands feel better. Thank you." Well, those were seeds that he planted in me. I started writing even as early as junior high school, and then much later on in life I started exploring the art of healing, alternative healing. So I thank Charlie, my grandfather Charlie, for those wonderful seeds that he planted many, many years ago, and he too stays with me even till now. So thanks again for watching. Just wanted to tell you about my grandpa.